Go for it.
And now, welcome to the evening where real estate investing and beer collide. This is Opportunity Investors.
What's up, guys? How's it going? Thank you for joining us tonight on this lovely, cool, breeze-filled, wonderful, you guys are all right, though. You guys used to the summer at this point. This isn't new. You live in Virginia Beach or Norfolk or Hampton Roads, so you're used to the heat. So you're good. Hang in there. We'll get through it together. That better? Okay. So who here is here for the first time?
Nice.
All right.
Wow.
Awesome.
All right. So
You picked a good night. It's nice
Yeah,
and
this is-
sweaty and intimate.
usually we
got
try
the
to keep it a little
moonlighting.
cooler.
It's great.
Yeah,
So-
especially for you new people, make sure you sign in over there with JP. JP, can you say
Raise your hand.
Yeah.
Hey.
I got it
Okay.
right there.
That way you can get notified about our next meeting and
Yeah.
all the ones after that.
So, guys, it's really simple. I just had to tell Sean this today. It's the last Tuesday of every month. Same thing we've been doing for like 4 years now, but
You know. Get with it. Get with the program.
so
Monday, Tuesday.
so where did you guys? How did you guys hear about the group?
Shout it out.
Facebook. Sean,
Me. How'd you guys
Word
hear
of
about
mouth.
it? Y'all were here a lot. You're in Virginia Beach last
you were
time.
saying bigger pockets, right?
Nice. Where'd y'all find us?
Nice.
Nice.
Friends.
A recommendation.
Friend of friend.
Awesome. And then
Cool.
bigger
We
What
love
about
pockets.
you guys
those.
back here? Google.
Nice.
Freaking Google. We're just talking about Google.
Google me.
Saying if you
Awesome.
Beer and real estate.
people are asking us where Smart Mouth Brewery was in Norfolk. We're like,
That guy right there.
oh, don't make me call him out in front of people. It's on Google. But sorry,
It was,
it's
a good,
cool.
it was a good question because you don't know if it's Smart Mouth, Norfolk, or Virginia Beach. Yeah,
It's true. That's
That's
true.
fair. That was a fair question.
That's true.
It's in kind of a weird spot too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Where am I going? Am I going to a meeting or are these guys abducting me?
All right.
it's gonna end
So
up in a fridge or a freezer.
since we've got a
somewhere.
lot of people who have not been here before, let me tell you a little bit about the group. It's a real estate investment group. We talk about investing strategies, financing opportunities, and implementing those right here in Hampton Roads. We bring in industry professionals, and then we discuss those ideas over a cold craft beer is usually the idea. So we decided we wanted to do real estate investing and we like beer, so we just kind of combined them. So that's kind of how this group came together. The other part of this group and a part of real estate is networking. So what you're going to learn as you do real estate is that it's really about who you surround yourself with, whether it's getting through a deal or finding the next deal. You need to have good people around you. So coming to an event like this really does help out. So before we move any further, let's raise our glasses for a quick toast.
Hey.
May your castle be secure and your cup overflowing. Cheers.
Hey,
All right. So a lot of times we like to start out with deals and brags. Anybody got any deals going on right now?
Come on. You got any?
I've got this under contract, 408 Roosevelt Street in Suffolk, and we've had a tenant in place that would not leave. Court date was today. They're finally leaving. My buyer canceled their contract last week because they didn't want to keep waiting. So I was just about to send it to you, actually.
Nice.
So I've got this contract for sale, and let me know if you want any details.
How do we contact them? So people online can hear and hear.
Phone number is 757-354-4356. Feel free to text me, or email is numbercrunchersva@gmail.com.
One more time with the phone number.
One more time with the phone number. Sean says 757-354-4356. My name is Sharon Lee Smith.
Awesome.
And is that a single family home? Do you mind sharing what you're selling it for or have it under contract for? Or do you mind sharing what you don't have to. Don't, there's no pressure. Okay. I'll follow up with you. I might have a buyer out there. So
When you're interested, contact that person. So guys, deals and brags, meaning did you close a deal? Did you buy a deal? When you bought the deal, what'd you get it for, right? Are you cash flowing? It could have been a wholesale transaction. It could have been a deal you took down that you're in the middle of renovating. You know what your numbers are going to be at the end of it. The reason for this is because then the group realizes it's not just we're talking about stuff, we're actually doing business, right? That's the point of the deals and brags. And that's why we like to do it, because it's fun. Like, you get to see somebody that's brand new in the industry come in and they're like, man, I just started like 2 months ago. And they stick around for 6, 7, 8 months. Next thing you know, they got their first deal, right? So that's the point of talking about it, is like, what are you doing? Are you doing the business, or are you just talking about it, right? Are you stuck in like paralysis of analysis? And you're like, I'm looking everything up, but I don't want to pull the trigger, right? Go, make it happen.
I've got a 6-unit complex in Norfolk coming up right now. I think we're going to do 530. So if anybody's looking at multifamily right now, it's kind of the Bayview area of Norfolk. So just let me know if you have any interest in that.
So that's online, guys, and here, right? So hit Alex up, right?
Cool.
Anybody else? Anything else? Deals? Close a deal, bought a deal, sold a deal? Anybody? Okay,
I
cool.
think they're shy.
All good.
We closed the transaction. We did 18.5 on it. It was a wholesale transaction. Hopefully, if this other one we're working on, we had a seller go dark on us 2 years ago, right? We recorded an affidavit of memorandum. In short, what that says is that we have the deal and we're able to close on it under contract. And the seller just like ghosted us. Literally, we went to the table and he didn't show up, right? So we're like, cool. You record this piece of paper called affidavit of memorandum. It lets everybody know to the public, hey, this company has the right to perform first. You can't clear that until they sign off, right? So 2 years later, somebody tries to go sell the property. Well, we're right here ready to buy. So the buyer said, well, I want to buy it. I said, cool. Well, we want to buy it first. We had that position. They went dark on us, so we still want to buy. The sales price back in the day was like $80,000. They had put a roof on it, put HVAC in it. That's an upgrade, right? So we should pay more. So we said, cool, we'll pay 100. We went up by 20 grand, right? This guy was willing to come in and pay almost 130. So we were like, cool, well, if you want us to go away, you got to pay us 20 grand. Or we have a deal. We buy it. Like, step out of the way because we have first position. And he said, no, I'll just pay your 20 grand.
Booyah.
So we should be is a key word, should be, and we've had this happen before, protect our asset, protect our position, where we will sign that paperwork, you will pay us on the HUD, and we will make that money. We wouldn't make as much if we had done the deal, right? Because we wholesaled that thing. We had like a $30,000 fee on it. Today, it's probably like a $40,000 fee on it, right? Imagine if we rehabbed it, what the rehabber's going to do. A lot more than that. They can pay a $40,000 fee. They're going to make a lot of money, right? So those were two that we worked on. And Ashley is in the middle of finishing up her rehab for her owner finance deal. And if you guys have been around us for a while, Ashley bought this deal creative finance-wise. Subject or owner finance with terms from the seller for like the 2% interest rate for 30 years fixed with like $5 grand to the table plus some closing costs.
Hey.
Guys, if that's not a good deal, I don't know what is, right? Like 2% to the home, to the guy that owns the home, but he's going to get residual income for a long time, right? And Ashley didn't have to go to a bank and qualify for it, and it was a great deal, right? So that's the kind of stuff, if you guys stick around us and you keep coming, that's the kind of stuff we want to talk about with you guys, about what you're doing and what's happening, right? Work your way around it. And then if you have deals, what deals are you working on? I'll tell you this for those guys online and you guys here. Go to VAoffmarketdeals.com. That's VAoffmarketdeals.com. You're going to have
VAoffmarketdeals.com.
If you're going to have a 2-form process there, right? Fill out both forms. And if you don't upload a proof of funds showing that either you have a hard money lender or that you can provide the down payment for a hard money lender, we will not add you to the list. It's very scrutinized, right? This buyer's list.
So you
is
just
very
told them
vetted.
to go there, and then you just told them they can't go there?
They can
Wait
go
a
there,
minute.
but you got to follow the rules, right? You got to play by our rules. We don't just put anybody on that list. And if you need help with funding, talk to us about that too. We can help you there. Cool?
What if they are funded by you?
we will sell the deal. If we fund the deal, everything's still got to work inside a 70% loan to value.
Can they join the list?
If we can prove that you have the down payment ability, yes.
There you go.
So if you borrow $150,000, I need to see you have 15 grand in the bank. That's roughly 10%.
So I don't work with Sean, so I'm just curious. And it's fun to play the game. So, yeah, that's awesome. So the reality is this, and the kind of what he's getting at is what this group is about. Sorry, my microphone's louder than his. Usually it's the other way around.
No shit. Turn it down.
Is that
Shut up, Owen.
there's so many opportunities in real estate. That's why we're here. And that's why we're kind of throwing out deals to say, hey, this stuff does happen. Try it out. There are financing opportunities out there. So just keep studying up, keep coming around, keep talking to people. Stuff will come together. But, you know, real quick before we hop into it, I want to thank Ashley.
Yes.
Over here hustling, Vanessa behind the scenes helping with the online stuff, JP holding it down over here.
Yes.
We've got a great group of people that have been putting this on for a couple of years now, and you know there's always new people. There's some people who come back, but really, you know, it's a great group. We're glad to have you guys here. But without any further ado, let's get into what we came to do. And that is to talk about accounting. Oh.
Yes. I think I'm the only one excited. It's fine. It's fine.
No, it's good. We all need to know about it. We just don't want to hear about it because she just told me, she's like, I'm busy because S Corps are due on September 15th. And I'm like, oh shit, I got an S Corp. I need to get my stuff together.
Yep.
So
'Tis the season. All right. So I'm Andrea McDonald. I am the founder of Pro Tax and Accounting. We've been in business since 2013. Can everybody hear me?
can you guys hear?
Cool. All right. Been in business since 2013. I've got an office in Chesapeake, although we work just pretty much virtually. In fact, Sean was my client for, I think, 3 or 4 years before we actually met face-to-face, even though we're both local. We can do everything electronically. So it's kind of cool. So I've got a small team. We work with clients across multiple industries, but one of our niches is real estate. So we work with real estate agents, brokers, investors. That's our highest concentration of clients is in the real estate industry. It's a fun area of accounting and it's a fun area of tax. So I really love it. So we're going to focus tonight primarily on the tax side. Steve sends his regrets that he couldn't be here. He was really bummed. He was looking forward to it. And I was looking forward to it because I can't answer any legal questions. I could tell you what I hear them tell everybody, them being the attorneys, but I'm not an attorney, so I try to be really careful with that. So we're going to focus on the tax side. And before we get into that, I want to know how many of you currently own rental properties, whether it's long-term or short-term. Okay, so we've got several. How many of you hold your rental properties in an LLC? Okay, a couple of you. And then the rest of you just hold them personally. So I'm going to start by giving you guys some information, just basic tax information. And then I'm just going to open up the floor to questions, and the conversation will just go wherever really you guys want it to go. So who here knows how the tax side of rental property works, where it's reported? Is it on your personal return? Is it a separate business return? Those of you who have property should know that, right? Okay, so it's on your personal return, typically. It's on your Schedule E, usually. There are some exceptions. Even if you hold your rental property in an LLC, if you're the 100% member of that LLC, it still just reports on your personal return. From a legal standpoint, the LLC is separate, but in the IRS's eyes, you and your LLC are the same thing. It's called a disregarded entity. So if you've never heard that term before, you should have. That means your tax pro isn't fully talking to you. So LLC, if you're the 100% member, is disregarded from you for tax purposes. So it reports on your personal return just as if it's in your personal name. Pretty simple, right? Cool. If you have your property in a multi-member LLC, and in Virginia, which is a separate property state, not a community property state, in Virginia, if you have spouses as members of the LLC, it defaults as a partnership. That adds a whole layer of tax complexity and compliance complexity. So that's a good That's a good planning thing for you to talk about with your attorney. Are there other ways you could accomplish what you're trying to do without having you both on the LLC and adding a whole bunch of expenses that you really don't need? So that's tip number one. Maybe if you're married, maybe your will or maybe a trust or something can handle what you're really trying to do by having you both on the LLC. Because partnership means you really need books, you need good, solid accounting, because you have to track a whole bunch of different stuff. You're going to have a separate tax return, you're going to have a partnership tax return, and then you're still going to have to report that on your personal return. So it adds a bunch of extra stuff. So just be careful if you're in a multi-member LLC that you really understand what you're getting yourself into. How many of you have heard about rental properties being considered passive activities? Passive versus active? Do you understand why that's important on your taxes? So how many of you have looked at what happens with those losses if your rental properties are still considered passive? So stop me if I'm getting too involved, because like I said, I could talk about this stuff all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. I love speaking about taxes. So when you own long-term rental properties, long-term residential rentals, let me be clear, we're not talking about commercial properties. So for you guys, this particular piece of information doesn't apply. When you have long-term residential rental properties, it's considered a passive activity unless you're a real estate professional. If you qualify for rep status, it's a different set of rules. But for the average investor who probably has like a W-2 job that's not in real estate and you're just investing on the side, it's passive. So what does that mean? If your rental properties generate a tax loss, which a lot of them do once you factor in depreciation, those losses can only be taken if you have other passive income to offset it. So let's say you have two rental properties, one shows income, one shows a loss. Those two can offset each other because they're both passive activities. But your rental losses cannot offset your W-2 income because your W-2 income is active and your rental income or losses are passive. Does that make sense so far? Yes, no? You got a question? A rental loss? Meaning if it shows a net loss. So after you take rental income and you subtract all of your expenses like your property management fees, your mortgage interest, your real estate taxes, depreciation, if the bottom line is a negative number on your tax returns, that means you're showing a loss. It could still be cash flowing, so let's not confuse cash flow and tax loss because those are two different things. So if it shows a loss on your tax return, you only get to take that loss if you have other passive income. If you don't have any other passive income, you don't lose the loss, it just carries forward to the next year, to the next year, to the next year. So it can be good and bad, right? Like if you have a really high income year and you're trying to get that down, your rental losses may not be able to help you unless you qualify for one of the exceptions. This is where everyone gets all excited. So if you're around real estate people, you'll hear everyone say, I need to qualify as a real estate professional. I need to qualify as a real estate professional. It's super important. Why is that? Well, if you're a real estate professional, and we'll talk about what the criteria is from a tax perspective, if you're a real estate professional, then your real estate activities are active and your losses offset all of your other regular income. That can be a really powerful tax planning tool, like crack fingers, dig in, this is where the magic happens. So it's a coveted status, and a lot of people don't qualify for it, even though they will try. If you lie to me, I will know. We're not going to do it unless you qualify. So passive activities, passive income offsets passive losses, but not active losses. What are the 3 ways to avoid passive loss limitations? I already talked about one, real estate professional status, also called REPS, R-E-P-S. If you listen to Bigger Pockets, you probably hear them talking about REPS. If you dispose of the property, so even if it's a passive activity, in the year you sell the property, all those losses that have been carrying forward all get released all at one time and they offset your gain. So that can be really powerful. That could be a planning tool by itself. You may not benefit in 2018, 2019, 2020, but then in 21 you sold the property and all those losses can offset your gain. The other way is if you earn less than $150,000 a year, so you're not a real estate professional, you're just average Joe, I work in an accounting firm as a W-2 employee. If you earn less than $150,000, then up to $25,000 of your losses are deductible. There are some rules. It starts phasing out over $100,000, but if they call $100,000 like lower income. So under 150,000, you still might be able to take advantage of some of those losses, even if it's passive. And then the third way is the real estate professional status. Everyone with me so far? This is like the boring crap. I can't wait to get to the questions, but I'm going to get through what I'm going to get through. Y'all can stop me anytime. So when you're working with your tax professional, if you don't already understand how that works, or if they don't understand what you're trying to do, it's a good conversation to have, right? So let's say in 2021, your income was whatever, you couldn't take advantage of your rental losses, so they're carrying forward. And let's say in 2022, you just have an amazing year, you're gonna owe a metric butt ton in taxes, and you're trying to find ways to get that down. Because now, when it's August, is the time to be having that conversation with your tax professional, not in January. January is not the time to try to find ways to save on taxes for 2022. August is the time to try to find ways to save on taxes for 2022. So if you think you might be selling a property and you're trying to decide if you're going to sell it in 2022 or 2023, have that conversation with your tax professional, because y'all can run some numbers and see when you can take best advantage of those released losses. So, I mean, we're talking about some pretty impressive tax planning, but it has to happen earlier than later. January is too late. You can't decide in January to sell a property in December. You missed the boat. All good.
Make it happen.
I know. I mean, look, we all try to work magic for our clients, but like, there's only but so much magic. I can't backdate transactions. Even if I want to, I won't do it. My license wouldn't allow it, and I'm just not going to do it. So how many people in here are real estate agents, brokers, or do real estate investing as your full-time gig? Anyone? Okay. So,
I mean, I kind of like it.
I mean, this guy, right? And that guy, or wherever Alex went with the microphone. So real estate professional status, if you're not in real estate full-time, probably won't apply to you. It's a really hard benchmark to hit, and here's why. So I write this down because the wording is very specific. More than half of the services you perform in a year have to be in real estate. So if you work a full-time W-2 job, full-time job is typically 2,080 hours a year. That means you have to work, if at least half of your time has to be in real estate and 2,080 hours is not in real estate, that means you need to be working a ton of hours to get more than half, right? That means you are working over 4,000 hours a year because more than half has to be real estate. That's not realistic. Some of us work a lot, but there are limits. We're not working 160 hours a week typically. And it's actually a two-part test. And 750 hours, more than 750 hours during the year have to be in a real estate activity in which you materially participate. So it can't just be I'm on the side investing. You have to be materially participating in your activities. So those two tests to qualify for real estate professional. If you're a full-time real estate agent, well, no brainer, right? You're full-time, more than half of your time is spent on real estate. You're probably spending more than 750 hours a year. If you're a halfway good real estate agent, you're spending more than 750 hours a year, so you're probably fine. It's the rest of us who have to really get down to the nitty-gritty. So what does material participation mean? Does anybody know? IRS loves their tests. There are 7. You only have to meet 1, and there are 3 main ones that people look at. So I'm not even going to talk about the 4 more obscure ones because those are no fun. Who's ready for some more numbers? I've already thrown a whole bunch of hours and percentages. Like, I hope you're writing all this down. Yeah, it's recorded. This might have been a good time to have a PowerPoint so I can have some visuals. So the 3 main tests, if you're trying to be considered a real estate professional and you're not a real estate agent, because if you are, that's a no-brainer, you must participate in the activity for more than 500 hours a year. That can be really hard with a residential, like a long-term rental property. Are you really doing 500 hours a year or more worth of work on a single residential rental? Probably not. And the IRS, if you were to get audited, will make you provide a time log, and they will go through it with a fine-tooth comb. It's insane. They'll pull up timesheets, they'll pull up mileage records, they will do everything. So more than 500 hours a year on the activity, or your participation constitutes substantially all of the participation for that activity, meaning nobody else is doing any work on the rental property. So maybe you don't get to the 500 hours, but you're doing everything. You're not hiring cleaning people. You're not hiring handymen. You're not hiring property managers. You are doing everything. That might be kind of hard if you're not a plumber or an electrician or a contractor of some sort.
Or if you just don't want to do it.
Or if you just don't want to do it like myself. I'm lazy. I want to be one of those passive investors. The third test is that you participate in the activity for more than 100 hours per calendar year, per tax year, and your participation in the activity is not less than that of any other person. So you're at 101 hours, but you have a property manager, probably aren't going to cut it. So those are the three main tests. And so you can see why if you're not specifically in real estate, it can be really hard to qualify for rep status. So that's why we look for the other tests to see if we can find a way around that limit, the loss limitation. Who's bored to tears? Who have I put to sleep? Who has questions about what we've talked about so far? You probably don't even know what questions to ask.
Hold on, Carrie. We're going to get you a microphone so everybody
Yeah,
online.
I'm sorry. I'm up here like
You
sweating like a
spoke
champ.
about commercial properties.
Yep.
Is that differentiated by a 4 multifamily unit and a 5 multifamily unit, or is it commercial for industrial purposes or purposes of retail?
That's a great question. So residential rental can include multifamily if they're all long-term rentals. You know what's a fun exception to the residential rental rules? Short-term rentals. That's another way you can get around those loss limitations is if you focus on short-term rentals. So short-term rentals, and we are going to talk about the short-term rental loophole. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. Is that me or him?
Don't know.
Sorry. Short-term rentals are considered commercial rentals, and then industrial, like office buildings, industrial buildings, those are all commercial. But even if you have a triplex, a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex, if they're all residential long-term tenants, then it's a residential rental and it's passive.
We're going to try to see if there's some questions online we can answer for a second, too.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a bunch coming in online. Can the 500 hours of activity be renovating properties on rental properties as a contractor?
Potentially.
Okay.
But if you're the general contractor, you might have trouble qualifying because you're not actually doing the work. You're just standing there while other people are doing the work, right? Mm-hmm. Sorry if there's any general contractors. Sometimes I get beat up over that answer. So it depends. If you're the actual contractor doing the work, maybe. You have to have really good time logs.
Okay. The others are more general. So if anyone has questions about this, we can go back to that.
Let's try to hit some generals just to see what they are.
Okay. What are some levels of income that some people want to stay under?
So
Sorry, Vanessa, for skipping around.
Yeah. So if you're trying to take advantage of rental losses and you're not a real estate professional, you want to stay under $100,000 to take advantage of up to $25,000. So it really depends on how much your losses are. If your income is $100,000 or less, you have a $25,000 loss allowance. Yep. So if you file jointly with a spouse, that's going to be combined income on the tax return. That's another tax planning opportunity. There are, generally our advice is that you're better off to file jointly with a spouse, but sometimes it's better to file separately, and this could be maybe one of those times. There are certain times when it's better to only look at one set of income. So under $100,000, you could take advantage of all losses up to $25,000. For every dollar of income over $100,000 up to $150,000, you lose some of that allowance. So for example, if your income was $120,000, your loss allowance is limited to $15,000. So if you want to be safe, stay under $100,000. But do you really want to give up making a bunch of money to save a few dollars, right? Like if you have $1,000 loss on your rental, that's not $1,000 in tax savings. That's $1,000 times whatever your tax rate is. So if you're in the 12% tax bracket, you'd be saving $1,000 times 12%. So this is one of those, like, don't just spend money to save taxes.
And learn where to do your business and what tax vehicles.
Right. There are other tax planning opportunities that can bring your income down. That's a whole other conversation.
All right, next one is someone is just hoping to hear about depreciation and bonus depreciation. So I don't know if you're going to circle around to that or.
We can.
Okay. And then what key IRS pubs should we know? I don't
Also
know
a
if
good
that's
question.
publications or.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
Because I saw it and I was like a British pub. Like I don't think the IRS has those.
Where are
but
IRS
okay.
agents hanging out that I can
If
talk
they
to?
did, it'd be a lot more fun.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can go like talk to IRS agents by going to these pubs.
I would go to those pubs. I
Right?
could get like all kinds of information. That'd be amazing. I'd
You're
buy
in
all the
DC.
rounds.
You're in DC.
Yeah. I don't know where those guys hang out. I feel like IRS agents probably aren't that fun. They probably don't go to pubs.
I bet you they're a lot of fun. They got a bunch of
I
jacked
mean,
up
maybe.
stories.
Probably. Yeah.
You're never gonna believe what this idiot tried to do.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. So, touching on depreciation real quick, if you have a residential rental property and you have a mortgage or you paid cash for it, I have people coming to me all the time that are like, I paid $100,000 for this rental property. I want to write off. I can write off. That's a $100,000 expense, right? That's not how that works, y'all.
Go fish.
Yeah. Try again. So the way you recoup your money on a rental property is you take depreciation. That's what depreciation is. It's basically over a period of time writing off your investment in that property. For residential rental, does anyone know what that period is? 27 and a half years. So it would take you 27 and a half years of owning that rental to fully write off the cost to purchase it. It's kind of crazy, right? I don't know why it's 27 and a half. Why not just 27? I cannot answer that, but it's 27 and a half. Short-term rentals and commercial properties are 39 years. So if you own an Airbnb and it qualifies as a short-term rental, you're actually depreciating it over 39 years, not 27 and a half. I see that wrong in a lot of tax returns, so just be aware of that. So there's depreciation.
Okay. And then someone asked about the new short-term rentals have been nixed in Virginia Beach except for Sandbridge. So what's the workaround?
There you go, Sean.
But I don't know if that's like tax workaround or
I don't
general
think it's a
The
workaround.
tax.
ability to even just have short-term rentals.
So it's
Okay.
just and whoever asked the question, if they can preference it again, specifically what you're asking, but Sandbridge is literally its own community when it comes to what it is and is not allowed to do. They have their own jurisdiction. They have their own laws. They literally have their own rules. Inside of Virginia State Police even have the ability and what they can and can't do in Sandbridge.
So strange.
It's crazy, right?
It's
and
like
that
Disney.
was it's like Disney World. In my world, you got to play by my rules. They did that a long time ago when that community started to get built up, and then over the years, their HOA formed a really tight knit over years. And I know all this because when I was younger, I started a landscaping company. I worked for Sandbridge Realty and Seabird Realty, and I had the contracts for 47 different properties. I was locked in. Nobody else could come in and get those properties, right? So that's a thing. You had to go before the board. You had to get approved, like all this kind of stuff. So to answer that question on short-term rentals, to Sandbridge, they are their own jurisdiction. And I would talk about it almost like DC has its own jurisdiction, and the way they're written inside of themselves, they're literally their own entity, right? So Sandbridge is almost in the same thing. Hopefully that answers your question. Carrie.
You mentioned depreciation. Can you tell me the difference between repair and replace for depreciation, such as
Yep.
appliances, conveyance, roofs, things like that?
Yeah, so his question is about what you can expense all in 1 year versus what you have to depreciate, what you have to capitalize. So the rule of thumb is if it fixes, essentially if it extends the life of the property or if it adds value to the property, then you have to capitalize it. So if you're replacing shingles, that's a repair. If you're replacing the entire roof, that's capitalized. Shingles you can write off in the current year, the whole expense. The entire roof, you would have to depreciate over a period of time. Fixing, I don't know, like replacing carpet, you could expense, but if you're replacing the subflooring and the carpeting, then that's capitalized. So you have to think about whether it adds value and is it permanently affixed to the structure or is it a repair? Does that help? Yeah. That's a great question because we see that a lot too. Do they have a list of what is
Do they have
considered
a list?
repairs
Like,
versus?
you can't have a house without air conditioning. You know, in this region, if you do window units, but heating system. I know we're required to have heat, but if you fix that, is that on a standardized list somewhere of what is structural and what is not? Because appliances convey, but repairing an appliance, you can take the expense off, correct? Versus replacing something.
Correct. Yep. So let me, one of the questions was about the pubs. So it's IRS Pub, I think it's 527 is the publication that deals with rental properties. And that publication will talk about the difference between repairs and capitalized costs. If you're looking for IRS Pubs specifically about short-term rentals, which we're about to talk about, that's IRS Pub 925. That's kind of a fun one for tax planning purposes. So I like to dig in there. Do we have any other questions that we want to tackle before we start talking about short-term stuff?
I guess it's more on the Airbnb stuff is clarification.
Sure.
He owns a property, or she, sorry, just says Facebook user, owns a property in the London Bridge area. So is there any way I can make them short-term rentals?
You have to go before the Virginia Beach Board and apply. If your application it was not prior to 2015, more than likely it's not going to be accepted. So there's a timeline and a space in which they didn't approve anymore and they're not allowed anymore to even come to the table. So yes, a lot of Virginia Beach short-term rentals. And if you look at it on a map, it's separated. You've got little pockets, right? And oceanfront specifically, very tight area, right? I mean, it breaks in between different lines.
Yeah, and like Vanessa said here, that's a good Alex question. He's more up to date on short-term rentals.
Yes.
I don't know if he
100%.
left or where he disappeared to.
He's
Yeah,
probably in
okay.
the AC.
He
Yeah.
had to leave early.
I knew he had to leave early, but I didn't know how early.
Yeah, he had to
so
leave early.
Message Alex for
Yep.
more info.
Good question.
That's it on questions online, though.
Okay.
For anyone here that has questions.
So you spoke earlier about number of hours required to call yourself
Real estate professional.
right. Does this count right here?
If you log it,
I mean, you can log it. It may or may not. So it depends how much of this kind of, I'm going to call it fluffy stuff. It depends how many hours you're logging as paperwork, researching. If you were to get audited and the IRS looks at your time log, if it's mostly that fluffy stuff, they're probably going to disallow it.
Okay.
So if it's, once a month for 2 hours and then you've got a whole bunch of hours doing actual hands-on real estate stuff, you might be okay. But if it's mostly this fluffy, touchy-feely stuff, probably not.
So second question, if you have an agent come and audit you, what is the absolute cleanest way to log this? I've heard Evernote, but what is the best, easiest way to make it just say, hey, here it is, go pound sand?
I have a lot of clients just keep it all in a spreadsheet. You're going to have date, start time, end time, total number of hours, description of what you did during that time. I mean, you're going to want to get pretty detailed. And the thing is with the rep status, it's a year-to-year qualification. So you may qualify in 2022 and not qualify in 2023. You may not know that until the end of the year. So you're going to want to keep logs because here's the thing. If you were to get audited and, right now, audits aren't happening much, but I feel like it's my duty to inform you that it could happen. If it were to happen, the IRS gives you a very short amount of time to produce those logs because they'll know who's going back and creating it on the fly. They're going to want to see that this is a log you kept throughout the year, detailed all the time, not waiting till the end of the year to put a bunch of stuff together. And so if you get a notice saying, hey, you need to prove this, they're going to give you a very short amount of time to do that. so that they can catch the people who are lying about it. So I would say the actual format isn't as important as the content. Be as detailed as you can. And I'm talking about like, in this 2 hours at my rental property, I replaced the faucet. I cleaned between tenants. Get detailed and get specific if that's a status that you're going for. Yeah.
So do the hours that you're spending looking for properties and meeting with sellers, does that also count?
If you are not a real estate agent, that's another one of those fluffy, and if the bulk of your hours are those kind of activities, it probably won't fly. Yeah. Any other questions about that stuff before we launch into the
I have
short-term?
one. And this is probably, it's like about me, very obviously. I work
Asking for a friend,
yeah, I work for a real estate investment firm as my W-2 job.
right?
Do I qualify as a real estate professional? I don't know.
So for you, it might come down to effects and circumstances. Like we'd have to talk through what you actually do all day long. Because like time spent doing social media posting won't count, even though it's about real estate.
Mhm.
I would have a hard time saying, yes, you would qualify without really digging in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I honestly, sorry guys, I don't know. I'd have to really look at what I do all day. It's a lot of stuff.
Good luck.
Go back and forth.
Many hats.
Good questions.
Many hats.
All right. Who here owns short-term rentals? Okay. I actually bought my first, finally. Look, I've been talking to real estate investors and speaking in front of real estate investing groups for years. After every event, people come up to me like, oh, are you an investor? And I always had to say, nope. They're like, what the hell are you even here for? How can you even talk about this? So I finally bought my first investment property earlier this year.
Nice.
I bought a beach condo in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Love it. And it's a short-term rental. It's working out great. Super happy. So now I can speak very intelligently and in the first person when I talk about this stuff. It's very exciting. So what is a short-term rental? Does anybody know what the definition is? So there are a couple of different definitions. And why this might be desirable is because we get around those passive loss rules, because short-term rentals are not considered residential rentals, they're commercial rentals. So we're not subject to those same passive loss limitations. So if the average customer use, the average customer stay is less than 7 days, it's considered a short-term rental. If the average customer stay is equal to or less than 30 days, but substantial services are provided, then it's considered a short-term rental. And then there's a bunch of other ones. The rental is incidental to a non-rental activity. You only allow access to the property during specific hours, like a storage unit, like a storage facility. So the second one is the one I want to touch on, the 30 days or less and substantial services. What are substantial services? Now for my short-term rental, and like most of them, we don't clean during the tenant's stay. We just clean in between renters, right? Move in and move out, right? Like they leave for the week, we clean, the new ones come in later that day. That is not substantial services. Substantial services, think like a hotel. They offer breakfast, they cook you breakfast, they clean while you're there, they come and make the bed every day. Or hotels did that pre-COVID, now they probably don't, but you're offering services during the customer, during the renter's stay. So turn down services, cleaning the room during the stay, providing breakfast, providing tours. You know, you load them up in your car and you give them a tour of the island. Those kinds of things are substantial services. And so your rental is considered a short-term rental if you do all of that, even if the stay is more than 7 days. So those are important because it changes a couple of things. First of all, depreciation is over 39 years instead of over 27 and a half. So it'll take you a little bit longer to recoup your costs from a tax perspective. That's fine. We're all good with that. It also, if you actively participate in your short-term rental, different than materially participate, it's a different test. If you actively participate, then you're not subject to those loss limitations. So we already talked about material participation, 500 hours, substantially all the services, more than 100 hours. What is active participation? Active participation just means that you make management decisions. If you decide to hire or fire a property manager, if you approve repairs that are suggested by the property manager, basically, if you have final say, then you actively participate, and now your losses are not passive anymore. So that's a powerful loophole, and it's available to everybody. This is not like some rich guy had a tax guy that charged him a lot and found this. This is just available to every Joe Schmo, whether you have one short-term rental or 50. So
It's a big one.
yeah, it is a big one. So if you're like me, I was a little nervous to get in the long-term rental game. I see what people do to houses when they get asked to leave, maybe before they're ready. So I'm nervous. I'm not quite ready to go there yet. So short-term rentals was a great option for me. There are some rules with your short-term rental. You can't stay in it more than 14 days a year and a couple of other things, but that's fine. I don't want my beach rental being occupied by me anyway. I want it rented out.
Doesn't make money if you're.
It doesn't make money, yeah, if I'm staying. So we go down for like 6 days in May and then 6 days at the end of September. So we stay under that 14 days like magic. And that way everything is still fully deductible.
Good.
Everyone's still here? I feel like I think it's that. It's probably that mic. Any questions about short-term rentals and the magic power of being able to unlock those write-offs? Can we get her the microphone?
Who?
Right here.
Right there. JP's on it.
Ah, yeah.
So I do midterm rentals for traveling professionals and nurses. What does that fall under?
That's going to be regular residential rental if the length of stay is more than 30 days and you don't provide substantial services. Yep.
There is a paperwork loophole on that a lot of people play with.
Okay.
So they write the contract for a certain amount of time, it cancels, and then it re-ups. I'm telling you guys, make a rule. Somebody's figured out a way around it, and it fits right inside of the tax rule. Or like, you know what I mean? It plays the game.
And really, it just comes down to documentation, right? Like if you're going to play those games, you have to, your documentation has to be tight. Because if the IRS comes knocking, and they're not the big, bad, evil people that everyone thinks they are, they don't want to be mean to you, but if you're doing something wrong, their job is to find it. Like it's their whole entire job. So document, document, document. Any questions about that?
So if I, just to clarify, it sounds like short-term rentals simply on a tax advantage or tax description are more tax advantageous than long-term rentals.
Correct. Yep. Sorry, I feel like I'm not having this microphone close enough to my face. Yeah, the main advantage is that you're not subject to those passive loss rules. So for higher earning, like higher income taxpayers, you may be better off just having a whole bunch of short-term rentals than a whole bunch of long-term rentals, depending on what your goals are. And that's another area of tax planning. You know, be talking strategy with your tax professional. If you are looking at acquiring properties, be talking about what kind would benefit you the most. I don't know. I think it might be that microphone being close to the board. Maybe. Oh. Any other questions? Is anyone bored to tears yet? Normally, I'm up and I'm walking around and I'm telling jokes. It's too hot, and I'm trying to stay on the camera. But yeah.
I've got some more stuff on the short-term rentals.
Okay.
Someone wrote on here, I've heard about being involved somehow with short-term rentals and something about 100 hours and tax advantages. Is there something there with that?
Yep.
And then I don't know if this is the same person or someone else that wrote, is active participating greater than 100 hours?
Okay.
So I don't know if those are two separate questions, like
They are.
things, but they both had 100 hours in them.
Yep. So you're blending material participation and active participation. It's two different sets of rules. Material participation is to make long-term rentals considered active. active participation is required for the short-term rentals, and the tests are different. The 100-hour rule is part of the material participation tests. For active participation, it doesn't matter how many hours, the number of hours don't matter. You just have to be the one making the management decisions.
Let's have you use this. I don't know if it's on mute right now.
You're live.
Sorry, y'all. Am I live? Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me now? I've got like a magnetic force field that's
You
taking all the
just keep
mics.
talking, and we'll get you up. We'll get you up.
Can you hear me now?
Just keep going.
How about now? Ooh, hello. Okay. Sorry, I was telling them earlier, I'm getting older and my vision is going to crap. So I'm testing monovision. So I have one contact lens in. Y'all, I can't see close. I can barely see far. I'm just a hot mess right now. So I'm not winking at y'all. I'm just trying to actually see. And also I can't read like the buttons. I'm done. So yeah, the 100-hour rule is part of the material participation test. For active participation on a short-term rental, it's not a number of hours. You just have to be the one making the main decisions. I can fire my property manager. I can hire a new one. I approve all the repair orders. They don't just do it without me. I have the right to refuse tenants if I want to. So that's a much easier to meet test. And so for tax planning, short-term rentals can be a great addition to your portfolio because it unlocks some tax advantages. Everyone good there? Oh, cool. Any other questions? I'm going to stand up because it's dying over here.
What software are you using for logging and tracking your time?
So it really doesn't matter. A lot of my clients just use like an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document. It doesn't matter as much the software as what you're putting in it. You really want to be detailed with the descriptions. So be detailed with the times. You know, if all of your time is a nice round number, they're going to know you made it up, right? You're not everywhere from exactly 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. You got there at 6:02 and you left at 6:58. So be specific with the times. And if you're going to, this is being recorded, right? Oh. Just be really specific with the times and be specific with the descriptions. So, you know, if you miss a few days, don't use round numbers. The IRS looks for that kind of stuff. Just so you know. And again, you know, the likelihood of an audit is minimal, but they do happen. So I can't tell you you'll probably be fine because you might not.
Can you touch on
Sorry.
1031s a little bit?
Yeah,
we
sorry. Real quick.
Okay.
It is 8:30. This place closes at 9. So we're going to do about 15 more minutes of like this round table and then about 15 minutes of networking, plus whatever we can kind of squeeze out before we get kicked out for you to talk to Andrea. So just keep that in mind. 15 more minutes of questions.
Okay. Yeah. Who here has heard of a 1031 exchange? Everybody, right? So that's everyone wants to do a 1031 exchange. And sometimes they're a good thing and sometimes they're not. So in really broad strokes, what a 1031 exchange is you're exchanging one investment property for another investment property. So you can't exchange your personal residence for a rental property. You can't exchange a rental property for a personal residence. And what the 1031 exchange does is instead of making the gain on that sale taxable this year, it kicks the can down the road. So it doesn't eliminate taxes. Let me be clear about that. This does not eliminate tax liability. It just moves it down the road. So in, like say I sell property A and I took that money and funded property B. You have to use a qualified intermediary, meaning you cannot touch that cash ever. If you touch the cash, it's a failed 1031 and it won't work. So the proceeds from the sale go to your intermediary, and then the intermediary sends it to closing for the next property. You never touch it. When you do that, the gain from property A gets rolled into property B, and it doesn't become taxable until you sell property B. unless you do another 1031 exchange, and then it all rolls to property C. So the only time that might, you can keep kicking that can down the road forever, right? Like you can just keep exchanging properties for properties for properties until you pass away, and then your heirs inherit the house at a step up in basis, assuming that doesn't get eliminated. And if that happens, then maybe it'll never get taxed. If that basis step up is enough to cover all those prior gains, then no tax is ever due on that. That would be the only way to eliminate tax. But 1031 kicks the can down the road. There can be some pieces of it, depending on the numbers, that could be taxable in the current year, but it just depends on the numbers. So essentially, you're just rolling your taxable gain from one property into your next one. It sounds super easy. It's actually a fairly complicated area of tax law, so we could probably have a whole session just on that. It is fairly complicated. You have to use a qualified intermediary. There's a whole bunch of tax forms, but totally worth it.
How many?
So I can send Sean and
question?
Ashley a list. The question was, do I have a list or an example of some qualifying intermediaries? Could it be a title agent? They have to specifically be qualified intermediaries. It could be a title company if they're qualified to do those. So I can send a list of some that I'm familiar with to you guys if you want to put it
Yeah.
out there.
Definitely.
So I'll send that to Sean and Ashley, and they can put it out on the opportunity page.
How many people online and in here would be interested in hearing about IRAs, Roth IRAs, learning about any of that kind of stuff?
Self-directed IRAs, that's a big one, right?
Yeah, that's a
Checkbook
whole
IRAs.
another game plan of like, why are we talking about 1031 when you can do this over here?
Yeah.
Right. And that's a good question, but I'm saying like, if you really want to learn about putting things in the right place, that's something I would love to bring somebody in to talk about. That's a big game changer. Sure.
Yeah, and all these strategies, not all of them, but the more complicated strategies like buying properties and self-directed IRAs using 1031s have very specific rules that if you violate those rules, it negates the whole entire thing. So
100%.
definitely have to do your research. Definitely work with a tax professional of some sort if you're getting into that level of tax planning, because everything has to be right.
Yep.
Any other questions? Are y'all ready to start the networking piece in front of the fans?
Well, I've got one question that I think would be good to end on anyway. We've had a couple people ask this. What can we expect from the 90,000, 80,000 new IRS agents?
Everybody calm down. Look, there are
That was
not,
the best social media setup ever.
there are not 87,000 armed agents coming to get you. Those 87,000 new hires, first of all, are going to be spread out over 10 years. Second of all, it's not just going to be enforcement agents. They're going to hire people to answer the phones. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the phone area is getting the first batch, which, hallelujah, I would love to be able to get through to IRS on behalf of my clients. That'd be fabulous. We get hung up on too. So it's going to be spread out over a bunch of years. It's going to be across a bunch of different IRS departments. They are planning to increase audits. Now, let me be clear about what that means. Right now, less than 1% of tax returns get audited. Less than 1/4%. We're talking about almost none. So even if the audit rate increases to 0.5%, we're still not talking about a whole lot of audits. So if you're dotting your I's and you're crossing your T's, even if you get a letter from IRS, you're going to be fine. Make sure you're not doing the wrong thing and you don't have anything to worry about. But they're not all coming for you. They're not all armed. That's just a small contingent of them. There are armed IRS agents. I don't know if y'all knew that, but the ones who go get Al Capone, right? They're going in with guns, y'all. They're not going in unarmed. So there are IRS agents that carry firearms and are trained to use them. Pew, pew, pew. But just don't be that guy. Just don't be that guy. And then you don't have to worry about it.
Just hire Andrew. You'll keep your ass out of hot water.
I mean, I'm not trying to get arrested. Did y'all hear about Trump's CFO pleading guilty to whatever he pled guilty to and paying a whole bunch of fines and penalties? Yeah, I'm not trying to be that CFO, so let's not do that. I'm not trying
We're
to
not
be
going to
that guy.
get you to do that.
Nah. I'll pass on those free
Good to go
employee
on that.
perks.
Good to go.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Anyone else afraid of the IRS and want some
No.
info?
Just play by the rules and learn to play with the rules. It'll be good.
That's the fun part about, the fun part about the tax code. Fun fact, there are more words in the Internal Revenue Code than there are in the Bible. So a lot of people are familiar with the Bible. Those are some really tiny print and a whole lot of pages. Well, the Internal Revenue Code has more words than that. So there's so much to learn. There isn't a single person who's the expert on all things tax, which is why a lot of us choose to focus, right? It's too much to learn everything. And so we choose a specific area of tax law, and that's where we focus. Are you falling asleep, sir? Okay, just checking. I actually had somebody, y'all, I was in San Diego last week presenting at a conference, and one person at the front table fell asleep.
What? Did you go
Yeah.
like tap him on the head?
I
You're
didn't.
Like, hello.
I wasn't
Hello.
trying to be that guy, but
Not
like
that
right
boring.
in front of my face. I'm like, come on, guy, like be in the back of the room.
And I feel like if you're going to a tax conference, like obviously it's interesting to you. Like it's not like a random person got pulled in off the street to go to this tax conference.
Right.
Exactly.
You chose to be there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like your granddaddy's tax conference either. I mean, in case y'all haven't figured out, I do things a little bit differently.
Nice.
Any other questions about taxes? I feel like the first part of this meeting was kind of boring, but it's nitty gritty stuff. Maybe I should have had a presentation with some numbers up on it. But if you want more info, my cards are on the back table. You can feel free to shoot me an email anytime. I'll answer your question to the best of my ability. Sometimes I can't. Look, anytime you ask me a tax question, the answer is always going to be, it depends. There are things that are very specific to your
It's like an
situation.
attorney answer.
I mean, and I'm not trying to be an a-hole about it. Like, it really does depend. Some answers are specific to your exact situation. And sometimes people will come to me with questions, but they already have a tax professional. I'm not going to give you advice that might counter the advice your hired professional is giving you. So I try to be very careful about that. But you're welcome to send any questions. I stay pretty on top of my emails. I'm pretty quick to respond, generally within 24 hours. So feel free to shoot them over. Happy to help if I can. If I can't answer, I generally can find the answer or point you to somebody who has the answer. I like to think I know everything, but I don't. Did you have a question? Okay. I don't. Also, Google is all right. I mean, that's usually where my searches start.
All right. So I think we'll wrap it up with that. Thank
So-
you guys for coming out.
Yes, everybody online, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Thanks for sticking in. Everybody here, stick out for a little bit. I know it's hot, but Andrew will kind of like get somewhere where you
Congregate towards
guys
the
can
fan.
talk, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like this just one-on-one thing. So kind of make it like a conversing thing where you can try to talk together because it
Yeah.
gets more out at one time. So whoever wants to talk with whoever, right? Whether it's me or her or Ashley or JP, like trying to just get around and talk with each other, right?
Yeah. and-
Obviously, most of the questions are going to come for her.
Yeah, and make sure if you're here that you signed in. We're gonna start giving away free beers. We've already done a couple, but then sometimes the meeting takes a turn. So we're gonna start giving away free beers at these meetings. We're gonna do raffles for people that sign in, and you want to be able to hear about our next event, right? Which I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I'm sure it'll be great.
Guys, thanks again for joining us and stick out for a little bit and hang out and network. Cool. Thanks.